2014, I was a stay-at-home mom. We had 2 children with us, and I put all of my trust in the marriage I was in. I trusted him to be our provider. I trusted him to keep his promises to me, to be with me through sickness and health till death do us part. But to my surprise, he had an affair. He left me one day back in October 2013, actually. One weekend after a year-long affair of just praying and praying that God would end the affair, he finally took the rest of his things and moved out, leaving me in a home that we were renting with 2 kids with no way to pay for it. I stayed home to take care of the kids, and that was our agreement. That was what he wanted. That was what I felt in my heart. And there was also other issues. There were certain reasons that I was not able to go out and get a normal job because of a situation with one of our children, which I will not share for privacy reasons. So here I was. I remember, so cold. It was Christmas Eve. And the only place I knew to go, because if we would have stayed, we would have been evicted on the streets, and there was nowhere for us to go. And it was snowing cold, like a snowstorm on Christmas Eve. And the only place I knew to go was to a family member's in Florida. So God opened a door miraculously for us to go, which seemed impossible because of the issues of control and abuse and everything that was going on with that relationship that I was in, my marriage. He opened a door for us to go. And so we left and we went there, and we stayed there for 2 years. I did a couple jobs while my kids were in school, but the issues with one of my children made it impossible for me to get a normal job. So I started this blog after finding a diamond on the ground during worship, and God told me to start this blog and to start sharing the love letters that he was giving me, because he was preparing me for something that I had no idea that I was going to need to survive. In 2016, that door unexpectedly came to a close. And there I was in another state. I had no one I could find help from. There was no one who cared. There was just this war of criticism and people coming against me at that time, and I was about to be homeless. I had no car. I had no income. But I had these promises that God had given me and prophecies that God had given me. And he would meet me in the night and tell me where to go and what to do and give me promises. He promised this blog would be my income and that he would support me. And then eventually it came down to, he said, this is obedience, that you rely on my promise to be your support. And there were times where I couldn't take the pressure and the fear and the pain of trusting my whole life and my children's life on a promise, where I would try to go work and then, I would end up suffering bad consequences because I entered into disobedience. My promise from God was not only that he would be our support, he promised he would be our home, that he would be our food, that he would cover all of our needs out of his riches and out of his abundance. And like Hebrews 13, to not put my trust in money or even people, but to put my trust in God, who generously and abundantly and lavishly supplies all things. So I had to learn to put my trust in God's words when faced with death. And He told me to take what money I had to go to a hotel room in a city I'd never been to with no car. Literally looked like no way we would survive. So I did. And it was the scariest time of my life, but also the most exciting because I was walking with God over the water. And God supported us for all these years through that time. We went through different hotels. We went to Airbnbs. God put us for 3 years into a castle apartment, which was like a dream come true. I still miss it so much. That was the happiest time for me, and in my heart that felt like home because it was comfortable and it was stable, or so it seemed. But then 1 year ago today, God woke me up early in the morning. We were about to have to check out. All of our money had run out except for what little I had, enough for maybe a hotel room, a little bit of food, and some gas. And He woke me up early that morning and He said, "Follow me through the aspen trees to the place of tangible hope." And immediately as I woke up, I was curious because I'm a treasure hunter at heart. So I was, what about the aspen trees? Why did you say aspen trees? And as I did my research, I found that it used to be believed that the aspen trees were a place where buried treasures were kept safe. And God showed me that His promise to me to be our support, to have an abundance, to live a copious life under His wings was my promise, where He would keep it safe in heavenly places. And I had to follow Him in order to see the fullness of that. And He promised me at the end of this that I would have a home. Not only a home, but He promised He would give me a true love husband who was chosen by Him. Because the last one, God warned me before my marriage not to do it, and I disobeyed because I didn't want to believe what God was saying. I wanted to believe this was it, and I got hurt because I disobeyed. But God said that He had someone chosen for me all this time, and that at the end of this, that He would give us our own home, plentiful support that falls like snow in the middle of July, and a true love marriage where I can be home and safe and not have to worry about broken promises and having to go through the same thing again. So we followed Him, and it was like a Holy Spirit school because God would show us where to go. He would give me promises. He gave me promise that I wouldn't lose my car, but He made me trust in His timing of when to make my payments on it. And there was one time where the payments got so far behind, and there was like a tow truck that came to the hotel parking lot, and I freaked out. I immediately ran out to the car, got my keys, went driving all day just to try to outrun tow trucks. And because I acted out of fear, I lost my car. And there we were, stranded at the hotel, like my worst nightmare, because my daughter has a lot of things that she brings with us. I try to have nothing just so she can have all of her things, and it's exhausting, and it's so much pressure and so painful to trust God to carry not only her, but all of the things that are precious to her. Because when we first went to the hotel back in 2016, we had to throw everything we owned in a dumpster in order to fit into a Uber car. to follow God, and eventually He took us back to Michigan, but it was painful. And I had to trust God to give back all those things that we lost. And it was a learning experience. Not only did I do that with a tow truck once, I did it twice. I had my car repoed twice. Both times God made a way for me to get it back. It's like going around a mountain, and every time God would give me a promise and I would fail, He would give me saving grace and help me to take the test again, but with trust and faith. And He taught me that I need to lean into my hope. He said the hope is connected to the promise. A hope, actually, in the roots of that word, it means a cord or attachment. And He said that our hope is connected to the promise. So when we put all of our hope and all of our trust and all of our faith in what He promised, then the promise will come out. But if we lean into fear, if we make decisions by fear and disobedience, which is always the path of fear, then we come out of God's protection and suffer the consequences of following that wickedness of, fear. Because God is leading us through His love and through hope. But the moment that we lean into fear, like, oh, we're not going to survive, there's not going to be enough provisions. And this whole year has been a roller coaster of extreme highs and extreme lows. It seemed like we wouldn't survive at times. There were times where I cried myself to sleep because we ran out of food and I didn't know how we were going to survive. And God would show up in the morning with a fresh support money for us to get food. And I would have to repent for even doubting His promise to me. It's like I had the promise of man broken, and now I have to trust that God in His promise is faithful, and that it's an anchor that I can trust in and depend on. Just recently, God, through this whole year, it's been up and down. We had one night where we slept in a car at a truck stop, and it was because, again, I had made a choice out of fear, and that fear put me out of God's protection. So there was one night where our home was literally in the car at a truck stop, and I had to put a blanket over the window because there were so many cars. You could literally see into the car next to you. It was horrible. But the next morning, God gave me saving grace again, and He sent me the money to go to a hotel room and to get a nice, good night's sleep in a nice, comfortable bed and a shower. And I've had to deny myself every single day. There's like this self-pity that wants to come out and say, I want a home. Everyone else has a home. God, can I just go have a normal job? Can I just go live like a normal person? And I've had to deny myself and take up my cross and put my trust in God's plan and trust Him to get us all the way through. Because if you jump off a train while it's going because you're afraid of where the tunnel you're going to have to go through, you could end up killed. It's not safe. Once you start going and following God into this promise, it's dangerous to try to go your own way. And recently, God said, okay, it's time to step up. It's time to step up your faith. It's time to kill those fears once and for all. It's time to be more daring and bold. And so we were in the suburbs of Chicago, and He led us to go downtown and stay in these skyscraper hotel rooms and trust Him to support us, because the support only goes when we go where He tells us to go. And that was the thing I was faced with yesterday. We recently checked out of an Airbnb where God had us for a month, and it was a time to recover and prepare for the next skywalking experience with God. And when we checked out yesterday, I didn't know where we were going to go. And we sat in a car and we prayed, and all of a sudden there were two paths presented to me. One path was comfortable, it was easy, it felt good because it was what I wanted to do. The other path was the path that God told me to do. It was terrifying, it was illogical, it was a risk of our life, and I knew that if I chose, I was actually getting warning that if I chose the path of my own, that would turn out really bad and terrible things could happen because we would be out of God's protection. So, what other choice do I have to follow Jesus? He's all I have. His promise is the only chance that we have to survive. It is the only way that we have to live. It's the only thing that's kept us alive all these years. And we are at the final stage. We are at the pushing stage of birth. We're at the end where we finally can have the home and, the true love, Cinderella marriage, happily ever after. So I have to die to myself and what I want and how I feel and how scary it is and all of the possible ways that we could die from this situation. And I have to put all of my weight into God's promise. When I first started making these love letters that you hear on my page, they came as a way for me to comfort myself and to cling to God's promises so that we didn't die. And I see comments sometimes since I started allowing comments a couple days ago, saying they're lies or whatever. And I just laugh because these promises, these love letters, they've all come to pass for me and they've all kept me alive. These words, when you lay your whole life upon them, and I'm talking you make your thoughts in alignment with them, your feelings in alignment with them, your focus, your attention. You cannot allow a negative thought. Absolutely cannot allow a negative thought because it is a slippery slope that will just take you out right away. It's like a water slide that leads to terrible consequences. You have to change your mindset. You have to rearrange your thoughts to match the promise. So I actually made myself recordings that are thoughts of what God promised. So I listened to them and I trained my thoughts to align with what God promised. It's not effortless. Only each of us can enter into the fulfillment of the promises, and it requires a complete abandonment and death to all fear and doubt, not just in what you say, but in how you think, how you speak to yourself, how you feel. It's been an aggressive exercise for me to go through while facing life and death situations. And yesterday I was presented with the God's way or the easy my way that makes sense and seemed like it made the most sense logically and economically, but it was not faith. And as I followed God's way, so we took back to downtown Chicago, and I only reserved a room for 2 nights. Last night was one, tonight is the other. Where tomorrow leads, that's in God's hands. And He was talking to me last night and encouraging me, saying I must be fearless. I must be daring. I must be bold to follow him and follow his path. And that's the thing with these love letters. I can share these love letters with you, and they are full of anointing. They are full of promise. They are full of prophecy. They are life-changing, but only if you do the inner work to live by hope and faith and trust and lay your whole weight upon what God promised and in total obedience to what God shows you to do. It means you cannot have, there's certain things that God had me go through for healing. I had to kill off the self-pity. Self-pity blocks the fulfillment of promise. I had to kill off all judgment and criticisms that I had against others. You cannot be judgmental to others. God told me that being judgmental impoverishes your life. When you have judgments, accusations, criticisms about other people, it actually blocks the fulfillment of your promises. So you're hurting yourself. When you stand in accusation, judgment, or criticism against someone else, you're not hurting them because they're blessed. And that curse that you're sending through your thoughts, through your words, through your opinions, it comes back to you. Because you cannot curse someone who's blessed. And every curse comes back to the person who sent it. And when you think negative about someone, when you have judgment or criticism, that's sending a curse, and it comes back to you if they don't receive it. So just focus on Jesus and your walk with him. It's an intimate dance. I don't pay attention to, the other opinions or negative people around. I just have to focus on Jesus, because in the end, it's just me and him. When I enter into heaven, it's not gonna matter if I had a negative opinion or the everything else. It's about our intimate. It's a heart dance with Jesus, each one of us. And it's not worth it to have a negative thought about someone else, because it only blocks the fulfillment of your own promises and prophecies from God. So God had me go through a deep soul healing of forgiving, forgetting, letting go of all the negative opinions I had about everyone else, and just starting with a clean slate. That's what it is to come with a pure heart before God. You can't have all that dirt, the negative opinions and the self-pity. That was a horrible one for me. And it's one that I have to keep killing, because sometimes it comes back when I'm going through a lot of suffering. The promises of God do not fail, ever. But as people, we can cause them to fail by choosing which path we follow, what we think, what we believe, what we feel, how we look at other people. God loves all of us. And he was telling me, even just recently, that we need to look at people as they are, and not for their behaviors or the ugliness, the dirt that you see on the way they talk or the way they treat people. Look at them as they are. Oh, this person, they love music. That's beautiful. God bless them. They love music. And, I'm a work in progress. But I know that if you clean the inner chambers of your soul, of how you think and how you feel and how you perceive others. If you start looking for beauty, that beauty of God will show up in our lives. So I wrote one book about the first part of our journey, and it's called Naked Wings. It's on Amazon and on my website on diamondsfromthedust.com. It is a completely raw, transparent, vulnerable testimony of all the times God's promises came to save us, but I'll tell you, there was much pain. It was not painless. There were times where we barely escaped by the skin of our elbow, where the room money didn't come till 3 seconds before we had to check out of a hotel room, and having no car, and faced with the possibility of being stranded and homeless, but yet holding the promise that God said He'll be our home and we won't be stranded or homeless. So it's been quite challenging to block off all of the outer world things I see and focus on all that God promised. And after this journey is complete, God's already shown me how to write the next one. And the best part that I've never told anyone is I'm not writing it alone. I'm writing it with my promised husband, who has actually been going through something very similar. And God is bringing our lives together, and we will write this book together. So not only am I going through this, but there is someone who is also going through it in their own dance with Jesus and their own story. And those two worlds are going to come together, and we're going to write our next book of living on God's promises, living by faith in the midst of death and danger and hunger and famine and everything that tried to kill us. My life is in God's hands. It's not my own anymore. Sharing this publicly is one of the most painful things I've ever had to do. I'm an introvert by nature. I like to stick to myself. I don't like to share with people. I absolutely don't trust people. But right now I'm trying to focus on learning to trust Jesus. He made me my promise. He is my husband, and I have to trust His vows. And if I can be faithful to Him, and if I can trust Him, then I know that I can trust also the person that God has chosen for my life. And I just want to thank you, those of you who have taken us under your wings. Even some of you have been there since the beginning, and you have been relentless to obey God when He asked you to help us. And I pray that you are so overwhelmingly rewarded for your faithfulness to God, for your heart, for your genuine compassion to love as Jesus has loved you. And I just thank you, those of you who have been our cheerleaders, who have encouraged us, who have helped us. There's some of you who have helped me when I felt defeated, and there were times where I had to cry on the floor in the bathroom, lock myself in there, and beg God not to let me kill myself, because the pain of facing such adversity, of having no money, no home, no food, whatever, and trusting God's promise, it was literally tearing me from the inside. It was killing off every fear, every doubt, every ounce of unbelief. And there's still more that I have to kill. Like, there's still fear that I have to, step on. There's still places of doubts. There's still places of unbelief, but God is bringing me into this more daring, more challenging part of the journey to flood out those fears once and for all. So thank you so much for those of you who have walked with us, who have loved us, who have helped me, who have prayed for us. Your prayers, I cherish them so much. I cherish you so much. I don't always show it. I don't always reach out to others because it just takes all of my strength to hold on to these words. Like tomorrow morning, we're faced with checkout again, and it's once again, where do we go? I'm still exhausted from moving last night. It took me 3 trips to walk down the city streets of Chicago, carrying all, my daughter's things, and it was exhausting, and I would do anything just for time to catch my breath already. But I have to just keep imagining, as the way God showed me to, that my promise is already fulfilled. We have a home. We have all we need. God's support has held us up, and we're already there. We're not trying to get to fulfillment. God's just waiting for us to believe, because the word's already been given. It's already done. It's up to each person to enter into that place where you believe that it's already happened before it has. I love you so very much, and thank you for listening to my story, and I'm looking forward to sharing the next leap of faith or step of faith I take with God with you, and of course, the final bloom. This is Dannette from diamondsfromthedust.com.